All right, so get ready because we are diving deep, deep into Lorenzo's predictions for this March 14th full moon and lunar eclipse. And, I'm just going to say it. This isn't your, like, typical, fluffy feel-good
Yeah,
astrology.
no, this is the real deal.
This is like cosmic judgment day vibes.
Right.
Lorenzo, well, he's always been known for being really direct and really specific,
Hmm.
and he is not holding back at all this time around.
Not at all. And what's I think really interesting about his predictions is how like specific they are.
Yeah.
He's pinpointing exact times and dates. It's pretty incredible when you really look at it.
Yeah, it's like he's got a direct line to the cosmos, and what what he's basically saying is, if you're not aligned, get ready for a really rude awakening. But if you've been
Mhm.
doing the work, there's a chance that some really, really incredible doors are going to open for you.
Absolutely, but you have to be ready and willing to, walk through those doors. That's the key.
There's a sense of like urgency to this whole thing, like a deadline we can't ignore.
Definitely a cosmic deadline, yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right in. So Lorenzo starts off strong. He says, "This full moon and lunar eclipse on March 14th is not here to play nice."
Straight to the point.
Yeah, it's a karmic reckoning, a final judgment, a moment where everything you've suppressed, your hidden fears, your deepest desires, your self-sabotage, your truth is thrown onto the stage, whether you're ready or not.
He's really painting a very vivid picture, isn't he? It's like the universe is like turning up the heat and saying, face yourself.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop there. It goes on to say, the universe is dragging you into the underworld, forcing you to see what you've ignored, feel what you've buried, and confront what's been waiting in the shadows. You won't get another pass. You either face this now or be enslaved by it for years to come.
I mean, that's heavy, right? It's a cosmic wake-up call, and you can't hit the snooze button on this one. And what makes it even more intense is it's happening in the 12th house, the realm of like, hidden truths.
Yeah, it's like all our secrets, everything we've been hiding from, everything we've been in denial about, it's all going to be illuminated.
Exactly. No more sweeping things under the rug.
Yeah,
And also, don't forget, we also have Virgo's influence at play here.
right.
And Virgo is all about order, precision, facing reality head on. So it's like this energy of you got to clean up the mess, whether it's your physical space, your, mental clutter, your emotional baggage. It's time to deal with it.
Yeah, Lorenzo really drives that point home when he says, "You've been asleep, wake up, or be taken under."
Hmm.
There's been a deep fog around your reality, a disconnect between your dreams and the way you're actually living.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've convinced yourself that things will work out if you just wait. Or maybe you've drowned yourself in distractions. That's over.
Oof. I think a lot of people are like really going to feel seen by that.
Yeah,
We all have those areas where we're kind of like sleepwalking through life, avoiding the hard stuff.
totally. And he goes on to say, the illusion is breaking, and you will see your own cycles, your patterns, your karma in a way that you can't unsee. Expect intense dreams, revelations, and realizations that feel like a slap from fate. The past isn't just creeping up, it's standing right in front of you, staring you down.
Ooh,
Are you ready to face it? If not, brace yourself because this eclipse will force you to.
that's intense. It's like we're being given this cosmic mirror to like look at our choices and our patterns and the consequences of like everything we've done, and there's no hiding.
No escape. And he makes that very clear. He says, the pressure's coming from every angle. You can't run anymore. This lunation shakes your entire foundation, your home, career, health, mind, body, past, and future, all of it. Every excuse you've made, it's being stripped away. Every lie you've told yourself, you'll choke on it.
Okay, so no pressure, right?
Right.
But seriously, it really highlights how this eclipse is going to affect like every aspect of our being.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so if you've been like, hiding from responsibility or playing small or settling for less, well, Lorenzo has a message for you too, he says. If you've been hiding from responsibility, avoiding the truth, staying in toxic relationships, playing small in your career, betraying your own needs, this is the final warning. The universe is issuing an ultimatum, level up or collapse.
He's not messing around.
No.
This isn't a gentle nudge. It's like a cosmic kick in the pants.
Right. And to make sure we're really paying attention, he gets specific about what that reality check might look like. He says, the reality check will come in brutal ways, through job instability, health scares, relationship breakdowns, sudden losses, or shocking revelations. Nothing will stay hidden.
So yeah, like a time of reckoning where the masks come off and the truth is revealed.
Yeah. But even amidst like all this intensity, Lorenzo does offer a glimmer of hope, he says. And if you've been playing fair, putting in the work, being honest with yourself, then this eclipse is your breakthrough. The chains are breaking, and you are about to step into your next phase if you have the guts to walk through the fire.
Right, and that's a big if. But for those who have been doing the work, facing their shadows and all that, this could be incredibly liberating.
Yeah, it's like a reward for showing up authentically.
Exactly.
For having the courage to, confront the darkness
Yeah.
and step into the light.
And it really emphasizes the choice that we all have right now. We can resist change and suffer, or embrace it and potentially thrive.
So Lorenzo actually describes this as a battle between our old life and our destiny. He says, a war between your old life and your destiny. There's a battle between what's comfortable and what's necessary. On one side, there's your past, your old self, your outdated beliefs, your fears. On the other, there's your future, your potential, your karmic path, the version of you that is free and aligned. This eclipse makes one thing brutally clear. You can't have both.
It's that classic struggle, right? Playing it safe versus taking a leap of faith. And this eclipse is like shining a spotlight on that tension, demanding that we make a choice.
And he doesn't let us off the hook with that choice. He continues. If you keep clinging to your old ways, if you stay in the same toxic cycles, if you let fear keep you stuck, then you are choosing your own downfall. But if you're willing to break free, to let go, to take the uncomfortable steps toward your real path, this is your rebirth.
It's so true. You can stay in the cocoon, but you'll never become the butterfly.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta get out there.
And then Lorenzo, he dives into what we might specifically lose and gain during this lunation. He says, what's being taken away? What's being given? Expect disillusionment, endings, and separations. You will be forced to release something, a habit, a person, a job, an illusion, a version of yourself that you've outgrown. The more you resist, the harsher the break.
It sounds like a time of purging, of letting go of anything that no longer serves us. And as painful as that can be, it's necessary for growth.
Exactly. And Lorenzo gets to that. He says, but here's the key. What's being stripped from you is what's been poisoning you all along. And in its place, the opportunity of a lifetime, a door that has never been opened before, is swinging wide. The question is, are you too scared to walk through it?
Right. It's like this cosmic trade-in. You let go of what's holding you back to make space for something new, something amazing.
Yeah, but it takes courage. It takes courage to let go of the familiar, even if it's not good for us anymore.
It does.
So Lorenzo, he actually gives us some pretty practical advice on how to, navigate this energy and how to really win during this eclipse. He says, how to survive and win this eclipse. 1, drop the delusions. 2, face your shadow. 3, end what needs to end. 4, take the leap.
I love how he frames it as winning. It's not just about survival, it's about thriving in the middle of all the chaos.
Yeah. So let's break these steps down. The first one, drop the delusions. And he says, stop pretending you're fine when you're not. Stop lying to yourself about people, situations, and your own actions. Right. If something is toxic, cut it out. If you're avoiding your purpose, stop wasting time.
Radical honesty, right? No more pretending.
No more.
Yeah.
Step 2 is face your shadow. And Lorenzo says, the old trauma, self-doubt, the patterns keeping you stuck, they're all rising to the surface now. Deal with them or they will consume you.
Right. So this is where the inner work comes in. You got to face those parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. You got to heal the old ones.
Yeah, and I think that step 3, end what needs to end, kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Totally.
Lorenzo gets really direct. He says, holding on to dying relationships, stuck in a job that drains your soul, living in a way that contradicts your dreams. This is your last chance to let go. If you don't, the universe will do it for you, and it won't be gentle.
Yeah, sometimes you need that cosmic push to make the tough decisions.
Yeah, and then the final step, take the leap.
No.
Lorenzo urges us. That thing you've been scared to do, that risk you've been avoiding, the change you've been hesitating on. This eclipse is a portal. The second you step toward your truth, doors will open faster than you can imagine.
A call to action, basically. It's time to move beyond the fear and step into your potential.
And he ends this section with a pretty powerful warning. He says, final warning. There is no going back. This isn't just a full moon. This isn't just an eclipse. This is the breaking point.
A line in the sand, right? Like a point of no return.
He goes on to say, if you think you can stay the same, keep the same mindset, and just wait things out, you're delusional. The world is shifting, and so are you. The question isn't whether change is coming, it's whether you're strong enough to handle it. You either evolve or dissolve. The choice is yours. Are you ready? because fate is knocking, and it doesn't wait.
It's a good reminder that we're not in control of everything, and sometimes change happens whether we like it or not.
Right. But we can choose how we respond to it.
That's true.
And I think that's what makes Lorenzo's advice so valuable, because he's giving us a roadmap, a way to navigate all this, to break free from the limitations and step into our power.
Totally. It's not just predicting the future, it's about empowering us to create it.
Yeah, it really does feel like this huge invitation from the cosmos to step up and become like the best versions of ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so now Lorenzo gets into like the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening astrologically during this eclipse. And he actually combines like traditional astrology with tarot. I love that he does that.
Yeah.
It's so insightful. And he does it in a way that's like really easy to understand, even if you're not like super familiar with like, all the ins and outs of like astrology and tarot.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
So he starts by setting the scene, and he says, all right, let's break down the March 14 full moon and lunar eclipse using astrology and tarot, this time with full transparency on how the energies work together. This isn't just another lunation. This eclipse is an unforgiving karmic checkpoint, a judgment day in disguise. If you're on the wrong path, prepare for reality to shatter. If you're aligned, doors will open, but only if you step up. No sugarcoating, no false hope. Let's dive in.
Wow, he's not messing around. I'm
Oh, no.
getting chills just listening to that.
To you too, it's like we're on the edge of something really big,
Yeah.
Okay, so he starts with the core energy of the eclipse, using both astrology and tarot, he says. The core energy, a karmic reckoning, full moon and lunar eclipse in Virgo, Ten of Pentacles, in the 12th house, the Hanged Man. The 12th house is the graveyard of the subconscious, the place of hidden truths, karmic debts, and illusions. Virgo's precision meets eclipse chaos, demanding you to clean up the mess you've been ignoring in your habits, your health, your spirituality, and your mindset.
Okay, so we have like this really potent combination of like Virgo's meticulous energy and the 12th house's focus on the subconscious, and all of that is like amplified by the intensity of this lunar eclipse.
Yeah, and then he brings in the tarot to kind of add another layer to that. He says, tarot parallel. The Hanged Man forces surrender. The Ten of Pentacles shows the structures that have supported you, but are they still working? Or are you hanging on to something outdated? Message, you're at a threshold. The world you built internally and externally either upgrades or collapses.
Ooh, I love that imagery of like hanging on to these outdated structures. It makes me think about like those areas in my life where I'm like clinging to what's familiar, even if it's like not really good for me anymore.
Yeah, me too. Like this cosmic reality check. Like, are we building on solid ground, or is our foundation crumbling beneath us?
And that message of surrender, it's like you have to let go of control. You have to trust the process, even if it feels like uncomfortable.
Right. It's about surrendering to what is and not resisting change. Okay, so then Lorenzo moves on to the influence of Mars, and he describes it as the explosive push. You can't sit on the fence anymore. Sextile to Mars, the Tower. In Cancer, the Chariot. In the 10th house, Judgment. Mars in Cancer wants to fight for security, but it's emotional, reactive, defensive. The 10th house brings public consequences, your reputation, your career, your legacy.
Okay, now this is where things start to get like really interesting because like Cancer is typically associated with nurturing and sensitivity and all that. But with Mars there, it's like that protective energy gets like amplified,
Yeah.
like maybe even a bit aggressive.
Right. So instead of nurturing, it's more like fiercely defending our territory, even if that territory is not good for us.
Yeah, exactly. And it could manifest as like standing up for yourself in a way that like you haven't before, or maybe even burning bridges that need to be burned.
And then Lorenzo brings in the tarot, he says. Tarot parallel. The Tower destroys what's false. The Chariot asks if you're truly in control. Judgment demands final decisions. Message. If your life's direction is built on fear, illusion, or avoidance, it's about to be ripped apart. This isn't just personal, it's public, unavoidable, and karmic.
So it's not only are we being like pushed to take action, but the consequences of our choices are going to be very public, very real.
No more hiding. It's like the universe is shining a spotlight on everything.
Yeah.
Our decisions.
And there's that karmic element again, it suggests that like we're dealing with like these patterns and these lessons that have been building up over time.
This is heavy stuff. I'm starting to see why Lorenzo called this eclipse Judgment Day.
Yeah, me too. But remember, judgment doesn't have to be negative, right?
Right.
It can also be a time of reckoning, a time to like take responsibility for our actions and course correct.
Okay. So Lorenzo then moves on to Saturn, which he says is bringing the hardest reality check. Self-sabotage won't work anymore. Opposition to Saturn, the world, in Pisces, the moon, in the sixth house, the Hierophant. Saturn in Pisces is a harsh teacher in a realm of illusion. You cannot escape responsibility anymore. Sixth house rules daily life, health, discipline. This is about your mental and physical habits.
Right, and Saturn is all about like karma and responsibility, so it makes sense that its influence during this eclipse is going to be about like facing the consequences of like our actions, especially in terms of our daily routines and habits.
Like that saying, you cannot run your karma.
Exactly. And with Saturn being in Pisces, which is a sign associated with like, dreams and illusions and all that, it suggests that we're being forced to see the reality of our situation, even if it's painful.
No more escaping into, like, fantasy land.
Nope.
And then he brings in the tarot, which adds, like, another layer of interpretation.
Yeah.
He says, tarot parallel. The world signals endings. The moon blurs the truth. The Hierophant asks, who is shaping your beliefs? Are you trapped in dogma, self-deception, or outdated commitments? Message. If your life is running on bad routines, false beliefs, or toxic cycles, this eclipse will not let you function until you address them.
It's like an ultimatum. Either you clean up your act or face the consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
And that question about who's shaping our beliefs, I think, is so important because, like, sometimes we adopt beliefs and patterns from our families or society that don't actually serve us.
Oh,
No. So this eclipse is a chance to really examine those beliefs and see if they're, like, really aligned with our truth.
And it's also about like, breaking free from those self-sabotaging behaviors and patterns that are keeping us like, stuck.
Right. Okay, so next up, Lorenzo talks about Uranus, which he describes as the shock of truth, a radical departure from the past, trine to Uranus, the fool, in Taurus, the Hierophant, in the eighth house, death. Uranus in the eighth house brings sudden, shocking revelations about intimacy, power, money, and transformation. Taurus is stability, but Uranus destroys stagnation.
And Uranus is the planet of like sudden change, upheaval, all that. So, this aspect is likely to bring some unexpected twists and turns, especially in areas related to like our deepest fears and desires.
And it's happening in the eighth house, which is associated with transformation, death, and rebirth. So it sounds like we're in for some major shakeups.
Oh, definitely. And with Uranus being in Taurus, which is a sign that like, really values stability and security, it suggests that like even those areas of our lives that we thought were like really solid, they might be up for reevaluation.
And the rug's being pulled out from under us.
You gotta learn to adapt and like, embrace the unknown.
Yeah. And Lorenzo's tarot interpretation adds to that sense of like unpredictability. He says, tarot parallel. The fool jumps into the unknown. The Hierophant represents traditions, but in the eighth house, some traditions must die. Death guarantees permanent change. Message. If you've been resisting change because it's uncomfortable, the change will now happen without your permission. The only control you have is how much you suffer while it happens.
That's kind of scary, but also exciting in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you're on a roller coaster and you can either like scream and resist or you can just like throw your hands up and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. And that message about suffering, I think, is really interesting because it suggests that it's the resisting change that actually causes the pain.
Totally. The key is to like surrender to the process, even if it feels really chaotic.
Right. It's about trusting that there's something better on the other side of the transformation.
Exactly.
Okay. So next up, Lorenzo talks about Neptune, which he says is bringing the karmic battle. Destiny versus comfort zones. Opposition to Neptune, the Hanged Man. In Pisces, the moon. In the sixth house, the Hierophant. Neptune distorts reality. The sixth house is practical, the opposite of Neptunian delusion. You may realize you've been lying to yourself, maybe about a relationship, a job, a spiritual belief, or even your own health.
And, Neptune is the planet of like dreams and illusions and all that. So its influence during this eclipse could make it like really hard to figure out what's real and what's not.
It's like we're wearing like those rose-colored glasses and the eclipse is trying to like rip them off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And with Neptune being in Pisces, which is its home sign, that energy is like even more amplified. So we need to be super careful about like getting lost in fantasy or avoiding reality.
And the fact that it's opposing the sixth house, which is all about practicality and daily routines, it suggests that we might be tempted to escape our responsibilities.
Totally. It's like wanting to check out and avoid the hard work of like dealing with our problems.
Right. And Lorenzo's tarot interpretation really emphasizes that need for, like, discernment, he says. Tarot parallel. The Hanged Man forces you to see things differently. The Moon shows illusions. The Hierophant demands structure and discipline. Message. If you've been escaping your problems, this eclipse slams you into a wall. Either you get real or you lose control completely.
It's a stark warning.
Yeah.
You can't just like run from the truth forever.
And that message about losing control, I think, is really interesting because it suggests that, like, if we don't consciously face our problems, the universe will force us to.
It's like the universe is saying, okay, you're not getting it. I'm going to have to make things a little more dramatic.
Yeah. I'm definitely getting that sense of, like, drama from, like, Lorenzo's predictions. Okay, so finally he talks about the North and South nodes, which he says represent the karmic checkpoint. You cannot move forward until you settle this. Opposition to North Node, the star, in Pisces, the moon, in 6th house, the Hierophant, and conjunction to South Node, the devil, in Virgo, the hermit, in 12th house, the Hanged Man. The nodes are karmic fates, where you need to go north versus what's pulling you backwards, south. The South Node in Virgo, an old system, a life built on control, detail obsession, or analysis paralysis. The North Node in Pisces, surrender, trusting the unknown.
Okay, the nodes are like such a fascinating concept because they represent our soul's journey and like the karmic lessons we're here to learn.
So the South Node is like our comfort zone. It's
Yeah.
those familiar patterns that we keep repeating, even if they're not serving us anymore.
And the North Node is like our soul's calling, like the path we're meant to be on, even if it like, feels scary and unfamiliar.
Right. So with the South Node being in Virgo, it suggests that we might be clinging to control, order, perfectionism, all that stuff.
Yeah. And the North Node being in Pisces is calling us to like, surrender to a higher power, to trust our intuition, to like, embrace the flow of life.
It's like we're being asked to, like, let go of the reins and allow the universe to guide us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Lorenzo's tarot interpretation adds to that sense of like karmic tension, he says. Tarot parallel. The devil is obsession, addiction, being trapped in a loop. The hermit is spiritual isolation. The hanged man forces a final lesson. Message. If you've been clinging to perfection, micromanaging life, controlling everything out of fear, you are now stuck in that prison. The key. Faith in something bigger, surrendering control, letting go of what no longer serves you.
Like that saying, let go and let God.
Exactly. We have to release our need for like control and just trust that the universe has our back.
And once again, Lorenzo ends with a warning. He says, final warning. No turning back. This eclipse doesn't offer second chances. It's a burning bridge, a collapsing timeline, a final decision.
He's really emphasizing the seriousness of this eclipse.
Yeah, he's not letting us off easy. He wants us to, like, understand, like, the magnitude of this moment.
Yeah, he's like, cosmic drill sergeant, wake up, soldiers, this is not a drill.
I love that.
Right.
Okay, so he continues. If you refuse to see the truth, it will force itself on you. If you hold on to what's dead, it will decay in your hands. If you don't take action, life will act for you. But if you embrace this, if you step up, let go, break free, then this eclipse is your liberation. You either evolve or dissolve. Choose wisely.
It's a very powerful message of like empowerment. We have a choice. We can either evolve and like embrace our potential, or we can stay stuck and face the consequences.
And Lorenzo isn't just like leaving us with these like abstract concepts.
Yeah.
He actually like, tells a story to illustrate these karmic principles.
Yeah.
I love when he does that. Stories are such a good way to like learn and connect with like, these complex ideas.
Totally. So he calls it the eclipse of reckoning, a story of fate and truth. And it's about a man named Daniel. He sets the scene, he says. The night was eerily silent, the air thick with an unspoken tension. The moon, swollen and full, loomed over the sky like an unblinking eye, watching, waiting. It wasn't an ordinary night, it was a night of reckoning. For Daniel, the weight of the past was closing in. He had spent years constructing a life built on carefully curated truths, a fragile empire of justifications and avoidance, a job he hated but refused to leave, a relationship that had long since died but lingered like a ghost in his bed, a dream he once believed in but buried under practicality.
Okay, so Daniel's living a life of like, quiet desperation,
Yeah.
going through the motions, but not really alive.
Totally. And then Lorenzo writes, and yet, as the lunar eclipse reached its peak, everything began to unravel.
This is it. This is the moment of truth.
Yeah.
The facade starts to crumble. And Lorenzo describes it so vividly. He says, That evening, Daniel stood in his dimly lit apartment, staring at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked unfamiliar, tired, hollow, trapped. The eclipse whispered through the wind a soundless command. Look. A notification flashed on his phone. We regret to inform you. His company was downsizing. The security he had clung to was gone. Then it came a second message. We need to talk. From her. The one he loved once, but hadn't touched in months. He knew what this meant. And then the third. A sudden surge of memory, unbidden his childhood dream, the passion he had long abandoned for stability, his soul's truth, buried under years of excuses, 3 blows, 3 doors slamming shut. The past, the present, and the future collided. It was over, and yet it was just beginning.
It's like the eclipse is stripping away all of like Daniel's, external things that he's been using to define himself.
Yeah.
His job, his relationship.
Yeah, and forcing him to confront, like, his deepest desires.
Right, and the choices that he's made.
And the choices he's made. It's like the universe is saying, okay, enough for the charade, let's get real. Right. And then Lorenzo describes this as, like, the breaking point. The walls he built crumbled fast. The eclipse was ruthless. He tried to reason. I'll fix it. I just need time. But time had run out. Fate does not negotiate.
So he's resisting the change,
Yeah.
trying to hold on to, this illusion of control.
And then Lorenzo actually shows how all of, like, the astrological influences that we talked about earlier are, like, actually playing out in Daniel's life. He says, the Mars energy struck like a bolt of lightning. His career, his public image, his carefully controlled life, gone in an instant. The Saturn opposition tightened its grip, forcing him to see the toxic cycles in his daily life. His health was deteriorating. His mind was a battlefield. His soul was screaming. The Uranus trine whispered one final temptation. You can still break free. You can still start over. You just have to jump. But could he? Could he let go?
He's like really caught between like his fear and his desire for like freedom,
Totally. And then Lorenzo describes it as like this war within. He says, the war within. Daniel sat in the darkness, the moonlight cold against his skin. The truth was so clear now. He was afraid of himself, afraid of his own power, afraid of stepping into the unknown. The South Node clutched at him. Stay, fix it. You know this world. Even if it's painful, it's familiar. But the North Node pulled harder. You were never meant to stay here. You have outgrown this life. The future is calling. Let go. He had been standing at the edge for so long. He had spent years looking over, wondering what it would feel like to jump. And now, he had no choice.
That imagery of standing at the edge,
Yeah,
it's like he's literally standing on the precipice of like his own transformation.
Totally.
And that struggle between like the South Node and the North Node is so real, It's that pull between like your comfort zone and your soul's calling.
Right. And then Lorenzo describes this moment of like, decision. He says, the decision. The clock struck midnight. The eclipse passed. The moon, once blood red, began to fade back into silver. But something in Daniel had changed. He reached for his phone. He sent a resignation email. He texted her. I understand. I'm letting you go. He opened an old notebook, his dream, his truth, the thing he once believed was impossible. His old life had died that night. And he had just been born again.
That's beautiful, that moment of surrender and rebirth. Like he finally let go of the past and embraced his like true destiny.
Totally. And Lorenzo ends the story with this like powerful moral. He says, moral of the story. You either jump or get pushed. This eclipse is not gentle. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't let you cling to safety. It demands a choice. Stay in your cage or break free. Hold on to your illusions or face the truth. Stay asleep or wake up. Daniel chose freedom. What will you choose?
What will you choose? It's such a good question. It's a call to action, to like step out of our comfort zones and embrace the unknown.
Absolutely. And Lorenzo doesn't stop there. He actually goes even deeper and reveals what he calls the unseen revelation of the March 14th lunar eclipse. What no one else is telling you. Everyone is saying the same things about this eclipse. Big karmic shifts, endings, emotional intensity, boring, predictable, missing the real story. Let me tell you what no one else has noticed. This is not just an eclipse. It's a karmic booby trap, a paradox, a cosmic catch-22. You see, this eclipse is forcing a sacrifice, but the cruel twist is it's demanding the wrong one.
Oh, okay. So there's like a hidden danger that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and he elaborates. He says, the hidden catch. You're about to be tricked by fate. This eclipse isn't just taking things away. It's making you feel like you have to give something up. And here's where the deception happens.
So it's like a test
Yeah.
to see if we're like really paying attention.
And he gets specific about like which astrological influence is creating this trap. It says, the south node in Virgo, the devil, in the 12th house, the hanged man, is a trap disguised as responsibility. You will feel like you must let go of a dream, a risk, a love, a passion, because it's not practical. You will tell yourself, now is not the right time. A phrase that sounds responsible but is actually self-sabotage. You will feel like choosing security is the mature thing to do, but it's not. It's the cycle keeping you enslaved.
And this is so important because, like, it highlights how we can be tricked by our own fear, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we think we're being responsible by, like, playing it safe, but in reality, we're just keeping ourselves stuck.
Totally. And the South Node in Virgo can make us, like, overly cautious, overly critical, and that can prevent us from, like, really following our hearts.
Oh, for sure.
So Lorenzo introduces this concept of the false prophet of caution, which I think is so brilliant.
Yeah, tell me more about this false prophet.
He says, the disguised enemy, the false prophet of caution. The opposition to Saturn in Pisces, the world, in the 6th house, the Hierophant, brings a false teacher, a person, a thought, a belief that looks like wisdom but is actually an outdated lie. Who is this false prophet for you? It could be a person, a boss, a family member, a lover, a friend, someone whose concern is actually fear disguised as advice. It could be your own mind. The toxic voice that says, be realistic, this isn't the right time. It could be society itself. The pressure to stay in line, do things the right way, follow the expected path.
Oh, that's so true. Like, I can think of, like, so many times when I've been given, like, well-meaning but ultimately limiting advice.
Me too. It's like those voices that tell us to, like, play it safe, stay small, don't rock the boat, all that stuff.
Right. And they can be so sneaky because they often come disguised as, like, wisdom and practicality.
Right. And then Lorenzo explains how this false prophet operates. He says, the Hierophant here is a prison guard disguised as a mentor. The moon, Pisces, creates a smoke screen of fear, making the future look uncertain so you don't take the risk. This is how fate tricks you. It makes you think you're making a smart, mature decision when you're actually surrendering your destiny to fear.
It's like we're being manipulated by our own fear,
Yeah, without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings us to, like, Lorenzo's, unique perspective on the 12th house eclipse.
I'm always fascinated by the 12th house. It's such a, like, mysterious and mystical part of, like, the astrological chart.
Lorenzo actually calls it the echo chamber of the soul.
I love that.
Yeah, he says, what no one tells you about the 12th house eclipse, the echo chamber of the soul. Eclipses in the 12th house are not just about the subconscious. They are about soul retrieval. The 12th house is where your unlived lives exist, the dreams you abandoned, the person you were before the world conditioned you, the version of you that took the risk instead of hesitating.
It's so beautiful. It's like a repository for, like, all of our unfulfilled potential,
Right. And he explains how this eclipse is, like, triggering this, like, echo effect from our past. He says, when an eclipse hits here, it creates an echo effect. A ghost of your lost self resurfaces. The part of you that once wanted to move to another country, start a business, fall in love without fear, break free. For a brief moment, that version of you stands at the crossroads again, and you have one last chance to make the right choice.
It's like a second chance to, like, reclaim our dreams.
Right. But here's the catch. Lorenzo calls it the time loop of the South Node.
Okay, what's that?
He says, the time loop of the South Node, the choice that repeats until you get it right. Here's where fate gets real. If you refuse to take action now, you are dooming yourself to repeat this choice over and over until you have nothing left to lose.
That speaks to the cyclical nature of karma. Like, we repeat the same patterns over and over until we, like, learn the lessons we need to learn.
And Lorenzo's suggesting that, like, this eclipse is this critical turning point in that cycle.
It's like our chance to break free from the loop,
Yeah.
and create a new reality.
He says, this isn't the first time you've been here. This isn't the first time you've felt this urge to break free. This isn't the first time you've told yourself, I'll do it later. The cycle is closing. If you delay again, the next time this opportunity comes, it won't be a choice. It will be a forced event, a tower moment, a regret you can't undo. This is the final fork in the road. Will you let fate trick you into playing it safe? Or will you break the loop and finally step into the life that was always meant for you?
He's really laying down the law, isn't he? Like, the time for hesitation is over. The universe is, like, waiting for you to, step up.
Absolutely. So to help us break free from this, like, karmic looch and avoid the booby trap of this eclipse, Lorenzo gives us this 4-step, like, battle plan.
Okay, lay it on me. What does he suggest?
He calls it How to break the eclipse trap. Practical steps to claim your fate.
I like that.
The first step is to identify the false prophet. You know,
Uh-huh.
like that lie that feels like wisdom.
Right.
And he suggests some, exercises to help us do that. He says, how to do it. Journal prompt. What have I always wanted but keep telling myself now isn't the right time for? Reflection exercise. Write down the names of 3 people whose opinions influence your decisions. Are they guiding you toward expansion or keeping you small? Break the spell. Say out loud, just because something feels safe doesn't mean it's right.
I love that. Those are great tools, like, to become aware of those influences that might be, like, holding us back, like shining a light on those shadows.
And he gives an example. He says, if you've been hesitating on quitting your job, starting a creative project, or leaving a relationship, this is the test. You're either going to be manipulated by caution or you're going to make the bold move.
Choose courage over comfort.
Yes. Step 2 is to do an eclipse ritual to seal the door on the past. And Lorenzo suggests a few different things. He says, how to do it. Write a contract to yourself. I, your name, refuse to repeat this cycle again. I claim my future. I choose your leap of faith. Sign it. Date it. Keep it. Fire release ritual. Write down the habits, fears, and limiting beliefs keeping you trapped. Burn the paper safely, watching the old energy disintegrate. Candle activation. Light a black candle to represent what's ending, then a white candle to welcome the new.
Oh, I love the symbolism of those rituals. It's like you're creating a physical manifestation of your intentions.
Yeah, there's something so powerful about burning away what no longer serves us.
It's like a cleansing.
Yeah.
A way to release the past and make space for something new.
Yeah. Step 3 is the 1-week action challenge.
Okay.
And Lorenzo really emphasizes that this is crucial because, the eclipse energy, it only lasts if you actually use it.
It's like striking while the iron is hot,
Exactly. He says, how to do it. Pick one thing that scares you and do it within 7 days. No waiting, no thinking. If you hesitate, the eclipse's power fades and you'll stay stuck. Small but bold. A phone call, a decision, a first step.
Love that. Just take action. It doesn't matter how small it is. It's about the momentum,
Yeah. And he gives some examples. He says, example, if you've wanted to move, research a place and book a tour. If you've been avoiding a conversation, send a text. If you've been scared to take a creative risk, release the work, NW.
Yeah. It's all about breaking through the procrastination and just taking that first step.
Yeah. And finally, step 4 is to break the South Node loop. And Lorenzo gives us this really powerful exercise. He says, how to do it. Write down 3 times in the past you almost made a big move, but didn't. Write the consequences of each hesitation. What did you lose by playing it safe? Say this affirmation daily. I refuse to repeat the past. My future is waiting, and I am moving toward it now.
That's a good one. It really helps you see the patterns, of your own self-sabotage.
Yeah, and that affirmation is so powerful,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a declaration of our commitment to change.
That's for rewriting the script.
Totally.
Right.
And he gives an example. He says, example, if you've been repeating relationship patterns, job choices, or personal fears, this is where you finally step out of the loop.
It's about recognizing those patterns that no longer serve us
Right.
and making a conscious choice to break free.
Yeah. And then, as a final power move, Lorenzo suggests taking a leap of no return.
Ooh, okay, that sounds intense. What does he mean by that?
He says, final eclipse power move, the leap of no return. How to do it. Make a move that is irreversible. Not a thought, not a plan in action that locks you in. Tell someone your decision so you can't back out. Book it, send it, announce it, commit to it.
Okay, so it's about burning the bridges, right?
Right.
Fully committing to your new path, no going back.
Yeah. And he gives some examples. He says, example, if you've been waiting to start a project, post your commitment publicly. If you've been hesitating on a breakup, have the conversation NW. If you've been avoiding taking a risk, buy the ticket, send the resignation, release the work.
Those are great examples. It's about making it real,
Yeah.
creating that accountability.
Yeah. And Lorenzo leaves us with this powerful reminder. He says, this is how you win this eclipse.
Yeah.
You cannot think your way through this. You cannot wait for the right time. The right time is this moment. Make the move. Take the leap. Don't look back. This eclipse will change your life, but only if you're brave enough to meet it halfway.
That's a good one. It's really up to us,
Yeah.
to make the most of this opportunity.
So what are your biggest takeaways from Lorenzo's analysis of this eclipse?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that this is like a huge call to action, like a time to like really confront our shadows, break free from those limiting beliefs and like, step into our potential. But it's not going to be easy, It's going to require like courage and honesty and a willingness to like really embrace change.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that, like, we're not alone in this. Like,
Yeah.
we have the support of the universe, we have each other.
Yeah.
You know, like this eclipse is like, a chance to really align with our highest purpose and to create a more fulfilling life.
And be kind to yourself during this process.
Yeah.
Change is hard. And it's
Yeah.
okay to like, feel all the feels. Just, stay focused on like your goals and keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And for those who are feeling like really overwhelmed or uncertain, you know, Lorenzo does offer a bunch of like, resources, like personalized astrological readings and tarot consultations.
Yeah, those can be so helpful for gaining clarity and guidance during like, these times of transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be sure to share those resources with our listeners in the show notes.
And in the meantime, I encourage everyone to like, take some time to reflect on Lorenzo's predictions and see how they resonate with your own life.
Yeah.
Like what changes do you need to make? What are the risks you need to take? What is the life that you're like, really meant to live?
Yeah, this eclipse is a huge opportunity to like create that new reality. So don't let it pass you by.
Yeah, don't let it pass you by.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Lorenzo's predictions for the March 14th full moon and lunar eclipse.
It's been such a fascinating and illuminating conversation.
Yeah. As always, we appreciate you joining us on this journey of exploration and discovery.
And we look forward to seeing you again soon for our next deep dive.
Until then, may the stars guide you on your path.
And may you have the courage to embrace your destiny.